अजीज दोस्तों नमस्कार. uh, Today we have gathered here to discuss the issues Hindu community in UK is facing. Um every community, when they go to another country to live, they have their own distinct culture, their own distinct beliefs, and many other things. And there are some organizations to protect their beliefs, to protect their cultural issues and all these things. But we have seen in UK, the Hindu community often feels orphaned, and there are more than 300 organizations, Hindu organizations. But when it comes to defend their religious beliefs or their cultural beliefs, uh, nobody comes up. So we have gathered here today with these issues. To discuss with me is Mr. Sunil Prohit, Mr. Adit Kothari, and our Bharat ki beti Gayatri ji. Pandit Satish Sharma and Indranil ji will join us soon. So let's start with Adit ji. Adit ji, you were very active during the protest, all the protests that happened on BBC or in front of Pakistan High Commission and all these things. How do you feel that Hindu organizations, or if you can say umbrella organization, is it performing according to the aspirations of Hindu community?
Uh, no, Arif bhai, देखिए, I have a very simple and a fundamental understanding of this subject where it says that the so-called Hindu organizations or the ones who represent the voice of the Hindu diaspora in Britain have failed miserably because they have an approach of working as a top-down organization rather than working from the grassroots levels, which is why they have failed miserably uh, to cater to any mentorship programs, creating leadership programs for young people to come forward and take the mantle and take new initiatives. Um, and most of these organizations are typically looked at with a very Samaj Seva kind of an approach, where the understanding is only once you have retired from your conventional job that you actually go into these kind of organizations uh, to sort of invest in community service. And that is where I think strategically we have gone wrong when we compare ourselves to other other organizations of other faiths. Primarily, if you look at all of these organizations which are so-called the Hindu bodies in Britain, most of the people who are actually running them are either 60, 65, 70-year old, and are usually very regressive to any sort of change, any sort of contemporary ideas. And that is where there is a clash, which is why I think there is a bit of friction, there's a bit of rupture, and we have not been able to get them to galvanize people for causes which actually affect or impact our civilizational discourse and value system. One of those predominant issues was the BBC protest, and followed that up with the 2611 protest, where we had hardly any support of these organizations. In fact, if anything, for the BBC protest, they were trying to deter people from going for the BBC protest because they had other ideas. Not sure what those ideas were, whether it was essentially diminishing their own institutional value, or was it to do with the fact that actually Rishi Sunak has become prime minister? So if Hindus were seen or Indians were seen protesting outside the BBC head office, that would have painted Rishi Sunak's campaign in a very negative manner, which I completely do not believe is true at all. Um, so Arifji, simply to answer your question, the answer is no. I think the so-called Hindu organizations in Britain have failed the diaspora miserably.
Thank you, Aditji. Aditji, let me take this opportunity to wish you happy birthday on your birthday today. Um,
Thank you, Arif.
Coming to Sunil ji. Sunil ji, there are two types of activities going on against Hindus. One is against their culture, religion, and one is against their country, India. As you were in British Parliament on last Tuesday, attending a Kashmir-related conference sponsored and organized by ISI. So, how do you see that suddenly we see there are so many activities going on against India and Hindus? I think we cannot separate Hindus from India or India from Hindus. So, how do you see all these activities?
Well, I mean, as you say, I was at this event that was organized by Tehreek-e-Kashmir, which is a UK branch of an organization. The connections are very opaque, so it's not clear how they're funded, who is backing them, but it's pretty obvious to me that they have links with Pakistan. The MP that hosted the event, did a very poor job actually of um, being chair in that particular event. And I was there. I think there were probably over 100 people, and there were just two people, myself and another colleague, representing the absent voice of Kashmiri pundits. But without exception, these people stood up. The young people in the conference stood up, and I would say without exception, they referred to Modi as a fascist, comparing him with no irony with Hitler, Mussolini. Actually, a few of them even said, "Oh, we Hindus hate Jews." Completely misrepresenting the reality. For example, on the 26th November attacks in Mumbai, the terrorists from LET specifically sought out the Jewish targets, and they were encouraged to do so by the handlers back in Pakistan. So these young people were just basically repeating everything we hear. If you follow any of the senior Pakistani politicians, in fact, just yesterday, Bilal Bhutto was basically repeating the same sort of things. Now, the issue we have is, first of all, there were only two of us out of 100, and we struggled. And in fact, I failed to get even a question in, even though it was supposed to be a balanced debate. But that's another issue. So we will fight, and we will progress the issue with Sakir Starmer, with the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner, because this is an abuse of the public facilities that we're all paying for, and it's being used against us. The very facilities that our taxes are paying for are being used to spread anti-India, anti-Hindutva, as they call it. But if you repeat something often enough, people don't even make the subtle distinction. So the thing I'm left with in my mind is, where is the space for a patriotic Hindu who is following Sanatan Dharma in its true sense, which is a universal, immortal, inclusive, tolerant faith? India has a long history of accepting people from different faiths, whether they be the Jewish people that are settled there back from the 7th century, with no persecution. That's an exception. Nowhere else on earth have the Jewish community been able to live in peace without being persecuted. Certainly not in Europe, and certainly not in the Arab world. Also think of the Parsi community. We welcome them with open arms, and they have thrived and continue to thrive and practice their religion in India. So to be lectured by Pakistanis about self-determination, about Hinduism effectively being Hindutva, being fascist, is rich, to say the least. The saddest thing in all of this, though, is that we actually have no voice from the leadership that we're talking about. So, as I see it, we have three broad constituencies within the UK, if we're talking about the Hindu community or the wider Sanatan community. And those three constituencies, to me, are the successful professionals, as either second generation, first generation who've been here a long time, people like me, or the newer people who are coming from India. And frankly, too many of that group are obsessed with the economic prosperity and don't really make the time to contribute to any cause that's beyond their own personal progression. The second constituency, I would say, is the Indian student body. Now, if you look at virtually every university, they have societies, and I think in most cases, the Indian society is probably the largest of those societies. Now, a case in point, LSE, where the cream of Indian youth from India get to go to, just only 2 weeks ago, the contrast was unbelievable. You know, the Pakistani society was hosting some anti-India Kashmir event, which was basically just propagating all these myths that I've described, whilst the Indian guys were basically watching a Bollywood movie, Om Shanti Om, I think, and having beer and pizza. So, you know, the mismatch is unbelievable. The contrast is unbelievable. The students that stood up at this parliamentary event last week were obviously students who are active. Now, they're misguided, but they're definitely passionate in a way that our guys aren't. So, you know, that's the second constituency. And then I think the third constituency is really made up of probably these 300 mandirs and organizations that the people like Hindu Forum of Britain claim to represent. But, you know, I know from personal experience, most of those organizations at the grassroots level are made up of just old people who just honestly want to go and do their prayers, puja, have a bit of social life. They don't want to get involved in anything controversial, and they don't really have any voice at the national level. So the people who would represent these three constituencies, i.e. the umbrella bodies, are doing a very poor job. If you look at their websites, I don't see anything of interest that they have to say on this anti-India, anti-Hindu, as I call it, because I think, you know, people keep talking about Hindutva, but you know, I mean, just the other day, Bilawal Bhutto is comparing RSS with the German SS. I mean, it's just ridiculous, you know. And even if RSS is similar to the SS, what is it that Modi has done since 2004 that merits him to be compared to Mussolini and Hitler? You know, 6 million Jewish people died in the Holocaust. It's an insult to the memory of those people. It's an insult to the 1.4 billion who have elected a democratically elected government in the form of BJP that's pursuing prosperity and opportunity for everyone, regardless of their religion, regardless of whether they voted for BJP. So, you know, we have a very active and well organized and well funded and well supported lobby group that's basically, you know, constantly repeating this narrative to such an extent that now it's quite common for the English, as I say, the Gore Labour and Conservative people to actually just repeat this stuff. They don't know any different. So just the other day, an MP who crossed the floor from Conservative to the Labour Party was, with no hint of irony, no sarcasm, comparing Narendra Modi to a war criminal who should be in Hague on war crimes. Now, you know, this is a travesty. We cannot have that type of ignorance go unchallenged, and yet the leaders that should be representing our community don't challenge these things. And I can only assume that either they're too busy having Diwali photo opportunities at the House of Commons, or too busy trying to get the next gong in the ladder. So if they already have an OBE, MBE, they want to go into the House of Lords, or what, I really don't know. Another case in point, and then I'll finish, is, you know, the Reach group, which some of us are involved in. We organized on the 26th of November a van with a digital display to go around all the iconic spots in London to remind everybody in London that India suffered a very big terrorist attack on the 26th of November, but actually in the form of the Mumbai attack. But that threat actually has, you know, materialized in other communities, London, New York, Madrid, etc. So we made that point, and we actually protested outside the Pakistani High Commission to make the point that the people who are supporting those terrorists, who are funding and training and giving whatever other support they need to be successful in their mission, are coming from Pakistan, either from the establishment or other organizations in the military, whatever. And so we made that protest, and we encouraged and asked everybody in the Indian diaspora, whether they're a religious body or whether they have any other interest, student bodies, whatever. And I would have expected these umbrella organizations to be at the front of that demonstration, highlighting, you know, the atrocities that were committed, the people who were responsible for those atrocities, but they were basically absent, absolutely, completely absent. So in my mind, you know, the summary is that they're a very ineffective body. Whether they can be coached or you know, molded into something that would be more effective is something we can discuss. But right now, you know, the summary would be they're not fit for purpose. In my personal view, they do a disservice to the community that they're supposed to represent. And those three constituencies I described should actually have leadership that brings them together much more effectively. And certainly I have ideas and ways how we might do that. but it would not happen from the current batch of leaders that we have. They're just, it's not in their makeup. They haven't done it so far, and they have no intention or ability to do it in the future, in my view. So, Arifji, that's for what it's worth, my view.
Thank you, Sunilji. Let me welcome Pandit Satish Sharma ji in the show. Pandit ji, welcome. मैं यहाँ पे एक बात कहना चाहूँगा कि काफ़ी लोग मैसेज भेज रहे हैं कि आप हिंदी में बात करें, तो मैं उनको बता दूं कि देखें, ये मसला है इंडिया हिंदूज इन इंग्लैंड का, और यहाँ पे सारे हिंदी स्पीकिंग नहीं है। इंडिया के साउथ इंडियंस भी हैं, ईस्ट इंडियन भी हैं, मुख्तलिफ ज़बान बोलने वाले इंडियंस हैं, हिंदूज हैं। तो हम ये स्पेशली प्रोग्राम ब्रिटिश इंडियंस को एड्रेस कर रहे हैं, इसीलिए हम ये इंग्लिश में कर रहे हैं। होपफुली आपकी समझ में मेजॉरिटी चीज़ें आ जाएंगी। मैं आगे गायत्री जी की तरफ जाऊंगा। बजाय इसके कि मैं अपने सवाल करूं, मैं पब्लिक के सवाल ले रहा हूं। ये एक सवाल है गायत्री जी आपके लिए कि गिवन इंडियंस इन पर्टिकुलर आर टारगेटेड रेगुलरली, what has been the missing recipe in the events like Leicester violence?
Yes, Arif ji. See, we have so many anti-national agendas that's going on in UK. May it be Kashmir issue, communists issue, या चाइना इंडिया को जो पुट्रे कर रहा है, इंडियाज डेमोक्रेसी को एज अ फैसिस्ट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन करके बोल रहा है अंडर फैसिस्ट रूल, तो वो सब को वी हैव टू कम ऑल टुगेदर टू काउंटर एंड हैव काउंटर नैरेटिव्स अगेंस्ट इट. And when we try together as all the Hindus to put a unanimous voice, we find that such institutions, such umbrella bodies are absent. We need the umbrella body over here to be extremely protective and highly combative on Hindu agendas. We also need to groom our youngsters and the second generation British Indians to have the same ethos, to feel patriotic towards their country and have that nationalistic feeling. They should take keen interest in the local electoral politics, and the Hindu bodies over here should support them financially, and and should groom them as a good candidate, so that you can bring a change among your own people. So these are all missings, and from Hindu immigrant, the minority insecurity is a must in the host country. So we must have the umbrella body protecting any kind of psychological harassments or any pains we face, just as we saw in Leicester violence. They were totally absent, and only few small organizations were taking the leadership and putting forward in the social media. And then a lot of things happened, like the police came, the statements came in the social media that this is a disinformation being spread by the Muslim gangs in UK. So what I experienced is that the umbrella body was totally missing in action. Thanks.
Home Production is asking that tell something about the nuclear threat which recently the Minister of Pakistan. Home Production ji, there is no nuclear threat at all, and Pakistan's nuclear capabilities are limited to dust now, and they have nothing. They don't have even petrol to fill tank of General Asim Munir. So don't worry about these threats. There is nothing in these kind of threats. Now, I would like to go to Pandit Satish Sharma ji before going to Indranil ji. Pandit ji, you have just come back from India. You had a very successful trip. You went to many conferences, many mandirs, many historical sacred sites. You have been very active in UK also, on especially Hindus of UK issues. How do you see situation? Are Hindu organizations active as much as Muslim organizations are active for Islam?
Pranam Arif ji, Namaskar ji, and Jai Shri Ram to everybody on the panel and the viewers. And congratulations to those people who support Argentina, and commiserations for those who were supporting the French. My apologies for being a bit late coming in. Arif bhai, you're absolutely right. I've just returned from Bharat, and I would love to share that there is a dynamism now in Bharat. There is an energy. There is a momentum, and it's wonderful to witness and to be a part of. The indigenous voice is beginning to say, I'm important, and this is what I want to say. So I was really energized, encouraged, and it was lovely to find that we're all beginning to be on the same page. The pulse is there. You may recall in 2013, we held this conference called Dharma Rising, and ever since that date, every year has seen an increase in the dharmic voice and the demands of the dharmic community. That's very good indeed. But equally, it's brought some challenges, hasn't it? For the last decade or so, I think the only threat we really had was the threat posed by the Church of England and its ridiculous caste program to try and vilify us and to divide us. And then we came together to sort that out and saw it off. But the last 12 months, I think, has really brought two things to a head. One is that in this United Kingdom, we are becoming noticeable and influential. You've seen that perhaps there's only now, I think, 49% of the population are saying that they're Christian, whereas the Hindu presence is becoming quite apparent. We're very energetic, we're very dynamic, we have the Diwali in the square, and lots of our festivities are noticed up and down the country. But in addition to that, we're now becoming politically noticeable. And so as a community, we are beginning to exert an influence on the political life and the religious life of the British community. And there are definitely groups who are not happy at that development. What it has done is it has drawn the reaction of anti-Hindu sentiment, and I think we're going to see that increase. The other thing is that as Bharat becomes more relevant and the indigenous dharmic traditions of Bharat become more vocal, become more influential, and start to redress some of the terrible crimes that have been inflicted upon us, we're going to see an impact, a response to that in Bharat, but also here. And so there has never been a time when we need to have coherent, capable, competent voices representing the community's concerns, and also perhaps even very skillfully being able to update the community with issues as they arise. That pipeline, that little connectivity between the two, the voice of representation, which is spearheading issues, and the voice of the community, both of those need to be developed very, very rapidly. Leicester, I think, highlighted all of the systemic weaknesses that we have. Gayatri ji and others have already mentioned that after the Leicester incidents, there was complete silence. There were no parliamentarians from our community. Those people who we applaud and welcome and embrace at Diwali, we give them garlands, and when they're standing for their campaigns, we rush to give them support. Ye apna hi bhai hai, ye apni behan hai. Where were their voices? There are people in the House of Lords who we've all supported, and we were delighted at their appointments, but they were silent as well. And this was, I think, a wake-up call, not only at the parliamentary level, but even the local councillors in Leicester. And Leicester has a very significant Hindu population and an Indian population. But did you see any of the Leicester councillors, predominantly Labour, coming in front of cameras, visiting the mandirs, actually trying to contribute towards a resolution? I didn't see any of them at all. And then finally, we turn to these organizations which call themselves apex representative bodies. I think their absence was the most noticeable. And we have to really have a look at why this happened. From my own point of view, I would say that we as a community need to recognize that our representative organizations are volunteers. Generally, they're people who have wonderful intentions, but sadly do not have them. They've not demonstrated that they have the skill sets to be able to deliver what's necessary, and that is a systemic problem. One of the other very, very significant problems is that we have no mechanisms, apparently, to communicate with those leaders and tell them it's time to move on, that they need to have feedback from us, they need to involve the community in their contributions, but most importantly, they must be accountable to us. When a person steps forward and says, I have representative authority, that I am speaking on behalf of a community, that person also shoulders the responsibility to inform the community and to be accountable by that community. And that is, sadly, there's been no evidence of that at all. And the manner in which shall we say, the major voices in these representative organizations are elected, how do they decide their term is over? How do we get people funneled into these organizations who are really good, skillful, and capable, dynamic, and perhaps more contemporary? It's all a dark, mysterious art, isn't it? It's so esoteric and so closely guarded, the secrets, that I think this is the last issue that we have to deal with. One thing I'd just conclude with, you mentioned the Pakistani situation. It's crystal clear the Muslim community and the Pakistani community have been investing in community organizations and in a political voice and a religious voice for a long period of time. And that's understandable. They've always had a game plan, they've always had an objective, they've always had a target, what they wanted to achieve. Whereas our community has wanted to do nothing other than participate and integrate and become a part of the life of this society. Two different approaches. But what's happened now is that our ongoing well being is directly perceived as a threat to the plans and designs of other communities and perhaps even institutions in this country. So we have to, more than ever before, settle back, understand what the problems are, and courageously appreciate that changes need to be made. We gratefully accept the seva that everybody has done, but they really also need to gracefully step aside because Leicester has demonstrated a woeful lack of competence, and that needs to be rectified very quickly. Next year, I'm anticipating as being probably the year when we have the most challenging time for Hindus in Bharat, but also in the diaspora community. We've seen the beginnings of attacks on Hindus across America. We've seen them obviously here in the United Kingdom. And not a day goes by without some terrible news coming out of Pakistan or indeed out of Bharat as well. And this is not going to disappear unless we address this issue. So I would say that we have as a community a great responsibility. Let's come together and put our own house in order. Let's confront the issues which are plaguing these organizations, deal with them, so that we can improve things for everybody in the next coming 12 months. Otherwise, we will be in a very, very difficult situation, and we will have nobody to blame but ourselves.
Thank you, Panditji. Yeah, absolutely correct assessment. Rana ji, coming to you. When I was living in Belgium doing my business, whenever there was a protest against India or any activities against India, we used to receive a text message from Pakistan embassy's political officer. And they were controlling all the Pakistani organizations, mostly Muslim organizations. How do you see things here in UK? As here also Pakistan High Commission controls Pakistani organizations and activities. Do you think Indian organizations and Indian High Commission has a coordination? Apart from Diwali and all these programs, they have coordination. But do you think for activities, political activities, Indian High Commission gives support to Indian organizations?
I'll put it in three major points. Could be a bit contentious, but three major points. Number one is that
we need to understand that Pakistan to survive, or Pakistan has survived based on anti-India agenda always, whether it is about terrorism, whether it is about nuclear activity, whether it is about anything, their foreign policy, their internal policy, their any policy of Pakistan, even the water policy is based on anti-India agenda. So that is what Pakistan unfortunately has grown into the last 75 years. So for them to do that has no, they have no other thing to do apart from that. Yeah, they've got another agenda. Apart, if they get some time left from this agenda, they have the begging bowl to go and ask for money to survive. Yeah, as you said, they don't even have a tank full of petrol to fill the general's car. This is what they are. So I mean, in a way, to compare Pakistan's agenda to India's agenda would be a bit. I find it a bit difficult to manage that. Number two, coming to the point, is that India has, in the meantime, the Indian High Commission. If you look in UK, I've seen in Germany also, they are very active when it comes to economy, when it comes to business, when it comes to tech promotion, when it comes to trade promotions, A, B, C, D, E, F. UK is a bit of a different scenario because in UK, as Panditji has said, as Gayatri has said, as Sunilji has said, that uh, there is a bit of a because the Pakistani, because of the erstwhile colonialism thing, there's a lot of Pakistani population also. Yeah, there's a direct conflict. The conflict now rising into fascism and whatever they say of the Indian government. That is again, that's the agenda they have to live to. But yes, I think the Indian High Commission has now realized, and I must give kudos to the current Indian High Commissioner and the team. They have realized that there is something that needs to be done, and I think they are doing it, and I think they're coming up in a proper way. You can see the stance, for example, as Panditji has said, when the Hindus were left, when the Hindus were suffering in Leicester, when they were sort of having nowhere to go, they were shivering that some goons will come and beat them up. Our Hindu Forum Board, which is a British Hindu Forum Board, were happy putting in the front page that they're going to the Queen's funeral rather than saying anything in support of the thing. The Indian High Commission has come up and said they're deeply concerned, and they've come up to the Home Office of UK Home Office to say they're deeply concerned with the attacks on Hindus and Indians in UK. So yes, it is happening. Now, Indian High Commission cannot, or we are probably more, I would say, a bit more diplomatic and more, I mean, in a right way to say that the Indian High Commission, it is also a bit of a British owned matter. They should handle it themselves, and we don't propagate any agenda of interfering in others' business. But at the same time, I think they are coming up strongly when it is happening, which is a good sign. And I think that is happening. Having said that, I mean, I'll come back to the point that we are all repeating that if we cannot, because we are British now, at least I am British, Panditji is British, a lot of us have taken British citizenship and become, we have British citizens. A majority of the Hindu society here is a British citizen now. They're having OCI, understand that, but majority of them are British citizens. And it is for us to fight in this country, not fight, I would use the word to, but to fend for ourselves, to defend ourselves, and to come back with a strategy on ourselves, to do it on us. That yeah, we have to take care of ourselves. Yes, we do get help from different quarters, but we need to have first support ourselves. We need to first strengthen our own belief and our own self, which is lacking here. So I think that is more of a point. And I think I must say that again, in the last 1 year, I have seen the Indian High Commission has become much more assertive and much more firm in how to deal with certain situations in UK. And they're doing a commendable job, I would say, overall, at least right now in the last 1 year.
Thank you, Ranaji. Yeah, I also have observed a similar thing about Indian High Commission's work. Aditji, coming to you, uh, recently we saw a blunder happening that there was a Diwali program in British Parliament organized by some MPs and lords, but the actual host was Hindu Foundation of Britain. and they invited someone who was wanted in India, and he had some serious charges against him. I think such a senior organization like Hindu Foundation of Bhutan should scrutinize their list of invited people very carefully, because after all, there are very few voices in British elected houses. So, how do you see this thing, and can you share some more information about this event?
Um, RFG, a friend of mine earlier today had pointed out that this is essentially a symptom of a debacle. And the reason why he believed such was the case is because um, organizations, or rather the Hindu organizations in Britain, have failed to clearly outline and structure out what their eventual goal is, or what their vision is. There is not a vision document that exists. So what happens is, in the scheme of things, when you need funding, you are running helter skelter, trying to join hands with anybody who can give you, or rather can support you financially. And in my opinion, that's exactly what has happened now. It's one of the worst things that could have happened to our community, primarily because you have shaken hands, and you've mollycoddled an organization which is wanted in India, which is a completely rabid organization for the kind of leadership uh, that they actually worship or they have. Uh, the gentleman in question, Nityananda, is wanted for a number of rapes and excesses against women and other fraud cases, not only just in India, by the way, in France as well. And as a result of mollycoddling with organizations like that, what the HFB have done is they've given ammunition to the left-leaning media. They've given ammunition to voices that have always called, Hindutva as uh, some sort of an evil, and they've essentially given them ammunition to say that, look at your associates, and this is what you have been playing hands with. So that has actually done a lot of disservice to our community, which if anything has been very vibrant, has been a very open society. We have again and again demonstrated, through various amount of data points. For example, the Hindu share of prison in the UK is less than 1%, whereas if you look at the Muslim share of prison is almost about 18%. So we've again and again demonstrated that we are a cohesive and a progressive community which is looking to amalgamate with the ecosystem and the cultural system that exists and prevails in Britain. Which is why we have never gone against when it comes to the British public schools, we've never called for a beef ban, for example, but the Muslims have called for a pork ban, which is now visible in various schools in the UK, especially councils like Islington, for example. So where institutions like the Hindu Forum Britain actually come short is reaching down to the grassroots level and ensuring that our voices are heard more cohesively and more coherently. Our vision structure is presented in a way to ensure that the larger community knows what the Hindu and the Indian diaspora is going to be, asserting themselves politically, and what their goals are. Um, so much so, this particular incident, I think, is not going to go down very well, not only with the Hindu Forum Britain, but also with the Conservative Party, because conservative leaders like Bob Blackman probably, in all fairness to him, he probably did not know that he was being pushed into a photo op with a rabid organization where the leader of that organization is wanted for excesses against women and fraudulent cases in France. So, I'll give him the benefit of doubt there, but ultimately, handles like Sunny Handel and other labor handles have already started questioning why the Conservative Party was involved in that particular event.
And not only that, but when the story was running on all the news channels, they have come out and defended their stand with Nityanand. Rather than saying or apologizing the Hindu community, they have stood and defended their stand with Nityanand, which is very appalling to I say. And then what we if you ask any Hindu today, they will dissociate themselves with such a fugitive who is wanted by the Interpol of by Indian government, and we should try to dissociate ourselves because that will cause a damaging impression on the Hindus worldwide. But somehow this organization has been very arrogant, very aggressive, and have put their demand they have shown that they are associated. What may come whatsoever, we are not going to separate our ways with Nityanand. So that is something which needs to be questioned to the head of the HFB, and we need like from the moral obligation, she should mm, uh, give her resignation and say sorry to the Hindu community.
I think more importantly,
Yes, Nilji, you wanted to say something.
I'll just complete by just one quick.
Did you go? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just one quick interjection. I think more importantly, I think it's because HFB essentially positioned themselves as an organization that lobbies the interest of the Hindu community. And if they are seen as that lobbying organization, and if the political dispensations and the opposition dispensation of the day, I'm directing this towards the Conservative Party and the Labour Party, if they see themselves, hands in glove with this organization, they simply need to cut complete ties with this particular body, primarily because they will do not only harm to the Hindu voices or the Indian diaspora in Britain, but they will also end up doing a massive amount of harm to the Conservative Party and the Labour Party. Sorry, apologies, Sunilji.
No problem. The point I wanted to make actually is the level of incompetence we're talking about is if you go to the Hindu Forum of Britain's website, even today, certainly yesterday when I last looked, this organization that we're talking about, at least the UK branch of it, is still there as one of their 300 members. So it very much is a question of never mind the quality, feel the width, as they used to say. I mean, yes, you can say you're an umbrella body for 300 organizations, but if you're not doing anything to weed out these people who are basically, the fact that he's banned and has had to flee India is appalling. And the fact that HFB hasn't actually even now taken that organization off its website as an official member says everything about their level of incompetence. That's number one. The second point is we mustn't underestimate the consequence of that level of ineptitude, which is that these people who are currently doing their best to represent the Hindu community, so people like Bob Blackman, one of the things that they would fear the most, and I wouldn't blame them, is the reputational risk of being associated with either incompetent or inappropriate organizations that damage themselves. So if we allow these people to represent the Hindu community and do it so badly, then we will lose the few voices who are willing to stand up and actually be the voice for the Hindus and Indians in Parliament. So we're doing ourselves a disservice is my main point. And so the answer to this, and I think the thing we need to bear in mind is, unfortunately, anybody who follows history, that they'll know that when Raja Dahir in Sindh first faced the first Islamic conquest coming to India, Muhammad bin Qasim, he didn't have any support from the fellow Rajas in Sindh. We saw that in, therefore, the early part of the Muslim invasion of India. All the way through to Mughal Empire, they divided and ruled the Rajputs so that, one fought against the other. The British did the same with Gurkhas, Sikhs, etc. And so we as a Hindu community have, unfortunately, a long and too long a history of being divided. And it's even apparent even now. If you look at India, one of the reasons why maybe the society has survived is that because we have, back in India, 80% of the population is Hindu. So even though the vast majority of them are not actively involved in doing anything, just because of the numbers you can get by. But even in that society, the level of internal conflict and I guess, sort of resistant to what most people would regard as positive change is there. So the people of Hindu heritage, and I talk about Sanatana Dharma in its wider sense, the people from Dharmic faith living in the UK need to actually adapt and change to the environment we're in if we're to survive. If we don't want to survive, if we just want to become brown English people, then of course that's an option. But for those of us who want to survive and thrive and add our own unique culture to this diverse multicultural society, we have to accept that the way that we as Hindus operate in India will not work in the UK. We are not 80% of the population here. In fact, we're a very small minority, and a minority that's going to be threatened even more as we effectively other communities become jealous of our success and influence. So we have to get more coordinated. We have to have better leadership. We have to have better representative bodies. And yes, from all of that, then we will have a more coherent and logical understanding of what it is that we want as a Hindu community, and what in fact is the Hindu community. It's more than just, you know, the very small groups that go to a particular temple. We come from we should all be proud of the tradition we come from. The Sanatan tradition it's amazing. I can't think of any other society, ancient civilization in the world that has survived at the level of the level of assault it's faced from external forces. And yet, despite that, we see in Western society today that despite everything, India is widely regarded as the spiritual home for a lot of people, not people just of Hindu or Sikh or Jain or Buddhist heritage, but even, you know, broader society, because the broader society doesn't deliver on every level the things that a human being needs to feel fulfilled and to feel happy. India has a unique place in the world because of its ancient civilization, because of the fact that it survived all this and hasn't allowed that experience to poison our minds. But, you know, there's one thing to be proud about that, and I am, but actually we now need to become stronger about what we will stand up for. And sometimes putting your head above the parapet involves some risks. Sometimes just being focused on your day-to-day stuff and your personal career ambitions actually misses the bigger picture and involves bigger risks. So I would say to everybody, think about the next generation of Hindus. What are you giving them? What are you passing on as your legacy? By not doing anything, yes, you may give them the material rewards that come from a successful career, but unless we actually do all the things I described earlier, we're actually in danger of not surviving as a distinct and separate entity within the UK society. That's my view.
Indranilji, you want to add something?
Yeah, couple of points. Number one, थोड़ा हिंदी में बोलूंगा तो जो इंडिया के जो हिंदी में सुनना चाहते हैं कि फर्स्ट थिंग है जो अपने धर्म में है, पश्चाताप, रिपेंटेंस। अगर आपने कोई गलती किया है, ठीक है, हो जाता है गलती, आपने शायद स्क्रूटिनाइज नहीं किया है, गुड फेथ में कोई ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को बुलाया, किसी को बुलाया है जो जिसे नहीं बुलाना चाहिए था, अब आपको पता चल गया है, एंड नॉट पता इसलिए नहीं चला क्योंकि हमने बोला, किसी ने बोला, पता इसलिए चला क्योंकि इंटरपोल का रिपोर्ट है, पुलिस रिपोर्ट है, आपको पता आपने गलत कोई किसी सज्जन को बुलाया है अपने फंक्शन में, हाथ जोड़ के आप माफी मांग लीजिए कि हमसे गलती हो गई है, हम इसका एक रिव्यू करेंगे, क्या कहाँ पे गलती हुई है, प्रोसेस कहाँ पे गलत हुआ, दोबारा नहीं होगा, हम इस गलती से मैंने बुलाया हूँ, हमने बुलाया है, जो भी बुलाया, आई स्टेप डाउन, एंड जब तक इसका रिव्यू नहीं होता है, ये नहीं होता है। तो देखिए ये होता है ये आप हिंदू फोरम चला रहे हो तो पहले अपना धर्म तो गीता का तो देखिए, पश्चाताप बहुत मायने रखता है जो इधर हुआ नहीं है। उल्टा जो अभी सुनील जी ने बोला कि वो अभी भी वो ग्रुप्स अभी भी उनके फोरम में है, तो ये नंबर वन है, ठीक है। तो नंबर टू, हिंदू फोरम ब्रिटेन ये बहुत कॉम्प्लिकेटेड चीज बन गया क्योंकि आप बोल रहे हो कि उनके वेबसाइट में देखिए आप, वो बोलते हैं कि दे आर द फर्स्ट पॉइंट ऑफ कांटेक्ट। उनका वेबसाइट बोलता है द लार्जेस्ट अम्ब्रेला बॉडी फॉर ब्रिटिश हिंदूज विद मोर देन 300 मेंबर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन फ्रॉम अराउंड द कंट्री। HFB is the first port of call from the central government and the most reported Hindu organization in the British media. So because second point to समझ में नहीं आया what is most reported about the British media, because that seems a bit uh, silly to me. But first port of call from the central government, इसका मतलब ये होता है कि आप हिंदू ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को और हिंदू ग्रुप को और हिंदू जो एक ये है यहाँ पे धर्म है उनके लोगों को आप रिप्रेजेंट करते हो। आपके जो चेयरमैन है, आपके जो ग्रुप के जो प्रेसिडेंट है, आई डोंट नो चेयरमैन है प्रेसिडेंट है, वो खड़े होके बोलते हैं कि अगर आप लेबर के एमपी हो, अगर आप लेबर के मेंबर हो, यू आर नॉट वेलकम इन दिस रूम, एंड देयर इज अ वीडियो फॉर दैट। तो अगर मैं सपोज हिंदू हूँ, मैं सपोज मैं लेबर का कोई हूँ, हाँ, या कोई आप हो, कोई और हो, यानी हम वो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के मेंबर नहीं है, हम वो रूम में नहीं आ सकते। तो यू आर क्रिएटिंग ए डिवाइड। So either you say it's not a Hindu forum of Britain, it's a conservative group's political hand of Hindu organization, and that's fine by me. You can have a political this thing for political mileage, you can carry for the Hindu vote, you can make something, that's absolutely fine. लेकिन आप हिंदू फोरम ब्रिटेन नहीं बोलिए प्लीज, क्योंकि आप हिंदूज को नहीं रिप्रेजेंट कर रहे हो, आप बोल रहे हो आप सिर्फ कंजर्वेटिव के मेंबर्स को रिप्रेजेंट कर रहे हो, जो लेबर के हैं वो नहीं कर रहे। आई एम टॉकिंग ऑफ टेक्निकल टर्म्स हियर, not any emotional. This is what they have done, this is what is written, and this is what someone has said in a thing which is in YouTube. You can all check that. So that's point number one. So you need to first understand that it is not a Hindu forum of Britain. Really, it's a political hand of a political party. Would that mean that tomorrow, if conservative is not in power, let's say someone else comes in power, hmm, I'm not saying it will or something. I'm just giving a hypothesis here. तो क्या आपका कोई मायने नहीं रहेगा फिर? That means you're a defunct organization then. बिकॉज आप तो बोल रहे कि जो लेबर के है, जो ये है, वो हमारे इसमें नहीं आएंगे। अगर सपोज टुमारो लेट्स से लेबर कम्स टू पावर, I mean, to be honest, the chances are high given the opinion poll. So, what happens to these 300 organizations? Number 2 point. And number 3 point, I think what Sunil ji has said in a way, and I want to bring a bit more focus to those 300 organizations who are associated with Hindu Forum Britain. Have you not found anything wrong, you 300 organizations, that there are 2 or 3 organizations that should not be part of your in a forum where you are part of that forum? Have you not raised your voice? Is it not then a democratic forum? And again, Sanatan Dharma is based on democracy. Jigyasa, curiosity, पश्चाताप, प्रश्न, ये सनातन धर्म का पंडित जी will explain much better than me, but these are the essence of Sanatan Dharma. And where does this stand altogether? I mean, this is what I would just want to say. I mean, it's more of a question to me and more of, I mean, I'm confused about this organization at all. I mean, what it is about.
Panditji, do you have anything to add to these things? Because you are also one of the most active voices for Hindus of Britain. So, do you have anything to add to this debate?
Gee, a number of things, a number of points have been raised. Firstly, excuse me, I don't think there's any benefit in double guessing the decisions that are made by the trustees and the various committee members in the Hindu Forum of Britain. They make their decisions. Presumably they've had some sort of conversation and come to a conclusion. They probably did their risk assessment, etc., etc., etc. But the difficulty is that having found that they didn't do, perhaps they didn't attain the standards we were expecting, is that there is no recourse to communicate that to them. That's the problem. The moment anybody in the groups, I've had so many people come to me and said that the moment we tried to contact Hindu Forum on Twitter, they blocked us. In fact, I've been blocked on Twitter by Hindu Forum for a long period of time. And that's the bigger problem for me. You see, people do make mistakes and people make judgments. Is there a group of us who didn't like the fact that a representative of Nityanandaji's organization was invited? And I have to say that the representative who attended is not guilty of anything at all. The groups who I know in the Nityananda organization in this country are working hard for the upliftment of Hindus and for the preaching of Sanatan Dharma. As individuals and as British citizens, I would say that they have every right to be invited. The work they're doing in this country is not problematical. I'd also emphasize that it's very easy to leap to judgment. But it's very difficult to be a Hindu leader in Bharat. I'm sure all of us can remember the Palghar Sadhus and what happened to them purely and solely for being Hindus. They haven't got justice yet. And if you try and engage the Indian government as a Hindu, they have an allergy to the word Hindu. And I speak on the basis of personal experience. Have you ever seen them in recent memory actually make a tweet or a statement in support of a Hindu group or a Hindu individual who has suffered in that space? So in the public space, it's very, very hard to be a Hindu leader. And those people who have studied jurisprudence in the Indian legal system, the judiciary in law actively exercises religious apartheid against Hindus. We are discriminated against in India for being Hindus. And so I don't really think that it's right for us to pass judgment on Nityanandaji for having decided to flee the country on those charges. And not for a moment am I condoning the activities if that's what's happened. But I do know that there are, shall we say, a huge number of Christian padris and pastors in Bharat with a lot of evidence against them who have somehow circumvented the legal system completely. So it's not so black and white that we can sit here 6,000 miles away and pass judgment. In conclusion, with that one point, um, again, I'm not at all supporting Nityanandaji personally and his choices and his words. They don't resonate with me, but there may be people who resonate with some of the values that he teaches. And I think it's questionable to judge every single member of an organization on the basis of failings of individuals. How many times have we seen Catholic bishops speak, and yet we don't say we're not going to sit in interfaith with Catholics? Right? We have had a case recently, a report that over 1 million children in Italy alone have been abused by Roman Catholic clergy. Are we going to say we are not going to sit with any Roman Catholic clergy in this country? So we have to be a little less um, triggered, shall we say, and retain some degree of fairness and equity in looking at these things. But that's the least of the Hindu Forum's problems. I don't think that's a problem at all. The bigger problem is the confusion. Are they a political organization? Are they a religious organization? Are they both? Do they not know what they are? You know, the politics, the home of politics is parliament. Parliamentarians are there to legislate, to create policy, to allocate resources, and to hear issues to do with those areas. They are not. Parliament is not a community centre, a cheap community centre where you can organise religious events. That seems to be a little confusing, unless there is a particular purpose in it. So I think the bigger problem, certainly with the Hindu Forum, is that they haven't yet decided who they are and what they are, but they've closed their doors to the community, and the community has got no recourse to be able to tell them this is a problem for us. And I think that is the biggest problem, and that is entirely unacceptable. The last thing I would say is that if you're going to stand and say, I represent, then that means the person or groups who you represent should have given you the authority to say that you represent them. You will notice that I never say that I represent anybody because I haven't asked for that authority. What I do is I speak about Dharma and I talk about issues to do with our civilization and our history. But I do not say that I have representative authority because that's a huge responsibility. And I certainly have not said to the Hindu Forum, I give you the authority to represent me. And for what I'm saying, what I'm hearing, a huge number of people are extremely dissatisfied that they have not given the Hindu Forum representative authority, and yet the Hindu Forum seems to have assumed it and represented itself as having representative authority to parliamentarians. And that is a very serious and large problem that needs to be dealt with.
I just Aditji, 1 minute. I want to inform you that I personally invited Hindu Forum of Britain on 26 November during our protest. Then we went to High Commission. I personally invited Lord Remy Ranger to come and clarify things, but they both refused. But they don't have courage to send somebody to speak. but they have sent their stooge, and he is continuously commenting that the panelists are paid by Congress, panelists are Jechans, panelists are left stooge. Who wants from panelists to become Hindu Forum of Britain chairman, etc., etc.? So I would like to say to Umesh Kumar Agarwal that, and he's saying that Arifji, why can't you call leadership of HFB to defend? So Umeshji, I have called them. You can ask Trupti Ban and Lord Remy Ranger. I personally spoke to them, and they said, no, we don't like to come in front of these things, and we don't want to wash linen in public and this and that, because they don't have a reply. Reach Group is asking them questions since months now, since the Leicester incidents, and they have no reply. At least if they claim to be umbrella organization of 300 Hindu organizations, they should have courage to reply things. If they cannot reply in public, they should call us and say, yes, your question is this and this is my answer. So Umesh Kumar Agarwal ji, stop your allegations. You are behaving like Rahul Gandhi, and nobody pays attention to Rahul Gandhi. So thank you very much. This is my final reply to your question comments. I have not blocked you because I want you to keep listening. Aditji,
Arifji,
you were saying something.
sorry, Arifji, can I just make one small
Yes,
observation? And
yes,
that
sir.
is that, I'm really hoping that the members of the Hindu Forum, the governance is in the hands of the trustees. And this is not just about Trupti Ben Patel. This is not just about Remy Ranger, right? There is a board of trustees, and the governance really rests with a much larger group of people. When an organization loses its direction, any of those individuals, once they're advised that there is a problem, really should step forward and invite the community, gather the appropriate people, and say, let's sort this out in private, right? Let's hear whatever issues there are. Let's actually move this thing forward. Nobody wants to have a public browbeating session or anything like that at all. That's not the way to do it. But it should be noted that this is really, I feel, an indication of the desperation. I know how difficult the situation in Leicester was. I know how desperately a voice was needed to be able to step into the position, calm things down, ensure that justice was done, ensure that our community was protected, ensure that the police were held to account for not having protected us. And they were not there. And as I've said, I'm fairly confident it's actually going to escalate and be worse. And so this conversation that we're all having in a public space, this is the last space that has been left to us and many others to bring what the issues are to the attention of the Hindu Forum, but more importantly, to the attention of the governance, the body which governs the Hindu Forum. They really do need to organize elections, they need to be completely open. It's called a forum. A forum is a place where Hindus can come and have a conversation. It's not an entity which immediately should say, no, we disagree with what you're saying, we don't accept what you're saying, and we're not going to talk to you. That's not what a forum is for. And so the seriousness of the situation that we find ourselves in, the circumstances which have led us all to come to this particular point, are sufficiently serious for the Hindu Forum to accept that it needs to do something. I've been writing to the compliance people at the Hindu Forum for the best part of a year. I've communicated with Dr. Ramesh Patni on the numerous occasions when things have been done by the Hindu Forum which have harmed us, acts of omission and acts of commission, and not had an adequate response. And I'm sure I'm not alone in this as well. So although we appreciate that it's not a pleasant thing to have this conversation in a public platform, please also appreciate the seriousness which has required this to happen. We have had to create a Hindu forum this evening here, and Arif Bhai, thank you for seizing the initiative on this and bringing us into your channel to have this conversation. And it is an indication of how serious circumstances are. It's imperative that the Hindu Forum steps forward and sorts these issues out. Thank you, Arif Bhai.
Uh, Thank you, Panditji, Aditji, coming to you, this question has come from public. What is the solution to these issues being debated to all the panelists? We are discussing about the problems. So now I think we should put some ideas about the solution. Starting with you, Aditji.
Thank you, Arif bhai. Like everything, as clinical as you are as a person, you like to define the problem first and then go into the solution side of things. I completely agree with that. But before that, I just had a couple of points to make if I'm allowed to. Uh, Panditji, conventionally, I always agree with and concur every single motion of what you present, barring the one today. Um, I personally feel that Nityanand could be doing a lot of good things. He could have been attacked in a malicious way due to the politics of how religion is viewed in India. Not no arguments there. But the point is, if there are valid sanctions against a particular person, if there are valid sanctions against a particular person heading an organization, and that is just not coming from the Indian law side of things, but also the international law. I'm talking from the French government's perspective. I'm talking about Interpol, for example. And if those are if those are contentious issues that are existing, why does an organization have to invite anybody representing that particular organization, especially from an Indian prism of things, given the fact that we know how the left-leaning media and the media in India can use this as a target against not only the Hindus in Britain but also against our own people back in India to malign our civilizational values in a certain way. So until their names are cleared, I think we should stay completely away from them, and that is what an organization like HFB, who claim to represent the voices of all of the Hindus and the Indian diaspora in Britain, should have done and should have followed that particular protocol. Uh, not an out of argument there where you have tried to say that there have been in Italy, for example, you've tried to say that there have been pastors who have been caught you know performing excesses against children, etc., and they have not been taken to task. But ours is a different, uh, politically looking at things. Ours is a completely different ballgame altogether, because there's an overt and a covert emphasis from not only the media but also the academia world to malign our whole civilization into a certain way, as if we're some bigoted people who are trying to be who are trying to claim everything as a Hindu, and trying to create a Hindu hegemonist state in India. So, which is why I think we need to tread a bit more carefully. That was my observation there. With regards to what Umesh Agarwalji is talking about, Umeshji, I understand you're not very happy with this particular discourse. Um, Nobody's looking for HFB's leadership here. I can tell you that for sure, especially given the fact that most of the people who are actually here, barring Panditji, I believe, and Sunilji, I think most of the people are actually political Hindus rather than religious Hindus. So we want to assert a more political, we want to assert ourselves better in a political way rather than more like a religious way, where the British polity and the governance system are able to hear our concerns and our issues in a more structured way. And that is where the problem essentially stems from. HFB has been a completely toothless organization when it comes to asserting our voice politically and asserting our issues in a correct way. And that was, like Sunilji pointed out, if you go into the HFB website, there is absolutely nothing on the Leicester incident. All they could have done is they could have quoted the Henry Jackson Society report, which was an independent report, and they could have said there is a concerted effort by not only the Labour Party or Labour councillors in Leicester, but also the various Muslim organisations and the and the media outlets to malign Hindus in a certain way in Britain. But I believe rather than questioning them, you prefer to throw your diatribe at us. We will take them with our open arms, and not question you as well. Now coming to the problem and the solution bit, RFG, in my opinion, I think the Conservative Party completely needs to cut its ties with HFB in any shape or form. There needs to be another organization that needs to come up from a grassroots level, where we create mentorship programs for creating leaders within our organization. Uh, Initially when we started the debate, I said, most of our current leaders look at any community work as samaj seva, and they predominantly look at it from a prism that, I have retired from a conventional life and now I will go into community service. However, the other organizations of other faiths, like the Jews in Britain or the Muslims in the UK, do not function that way. They start honing and start looking at skill development programs of their young, in a way to hone those leadership skills and bring them forward, so that they understand what their cultural values are, and how it sort of sits within the ecosystem in Britain, and how we can sort of combine both to create an atmosphere of where both can exist, and we can all coexist in a peaceful and a democratic society. Um, so the Hindus definitely need to galvanize themselves. Sunilji also pointed out that the students who come into Britain, into studying in the various universities, need to voice their opinion and understand, that there is a covert and a overt kind of uh, a way where India is being maligned in a certain way within the university and the academic domain. So they need to become more aware, and only organizations can do this. Individuals cannot do it, and that is what was essentially expected of the likes of HFB and other Hindu bodies in Britain.
Yeah, I would like to just add one more point, as Adit said on Panditji's observations. Thing is that Dawood and Hafiz Saeed are also having a lot of NGOs opened in UK and Pakistan and doing a lot of humanitarian work, but that doesn't make them as a body of somebody, a model of showing humanity. So similarly, I would put Nityanand in that bracket, stating that he has committed crimes, and in the name of the religion, he's fooling people around. Um, yes, it is open to people how they perceive, but yeah, on when the statements came out in the public from the vice president of HFB and the founder immediately said that I am a Sikh and I do not know any personal Hindu organizations what they are involved with. So he washed off his hand completely. If you are a founder, why you are not participating in the due diligence of the Hindu bodies that you are representing? If you lack people, then recruit people who can do that duty on your behalf. Second thing is that this gentleman, Mr. Umesh Agrawal, who is pointing out things over here, I did not find him participating in any kind of like protest what we did in like 2611 protest we did. I found him missing in action. So over here, putting questions doesn't make sense when you are not collaborating with other Hindu people for cause for India. And the cause for India is just not limited to Hindus but all other religions as well. But I find missing such people missing in those protests. And thing is that the solution to this is that total HFB, we are not saying HFB is bad, but the people who are managing is totally have lost the cause. They are on the personal objective to gain their personal objectives, so they have totally lost the cause. Recently a lot of articles Reach has published. There was Audrey Trusky who was giving a lecture in Paris on 6th of December. There was an article from the Guardian, a racist article against Rishi Sunak. But where is Hindu Forum Britain countering it? They and the students from LSE are organizing seminars against Kashmir, against India. So I don't find them writing letters to the MPs, to the concerned body, to bring out the Hindu cause over here. So total that body needs to be dismantled and restructured.
थैंक यू गायत्री जी. मैं जरा अपनी जबान में उमेश जी को कुछ समझाना चाह रहा हूँ, क्योंकि वो कंटिन्यूअसली कुछ ना कुछ कह रहे हैं. उमेश जी, आपसे मैं भी कांटेक्ट में था, आप रीच में थे, आप कह रहे हो कि आप रीच ग्रुप में थे. आप बैठ के सोचो, अब आप रीच ग्रुप में क्यों नहीं हो, ये आपका सोचने का है. दूसरा ये है कि मेरे पास तो, आपको पता है, मेरा तो फील्ड ऐसा है कि मेरे पास जिहादी पाकिस्तानी इंडिया के जो कांग्रेसी लेफ्ट के लोग आते हैं ना, तो मैं उनसे बड़ी स्पेशल जबान में बात करता हूँ. आपसे मैं वो बात करना नहीं चाह रहा. अब आपके व्हाट्सएप पे मैं आपके मैसेजेस का जवाब क्यों नहीं देता, ये भी आप बैठ के सोचिएगा. आपने सवाल किया है कि प्रूफ दिखाओ कि तुमने तृप्ति बहन को कब इनवाइट किया था. तो मेरे मामा नहीं लगते हो तुम कि मैं तुम्हें प्रूफ दिखाऊंगा, ठीक है ना. और यह है कि मैं जो करता हूं, या रीच भी जो कर रहा है, ये ओपनली कर रहा है. HFB के खिलाफ बैक बाइटिंग नहीं कर रहा, ओपनली सवाल ठोके हैं. HFB में इतना दम होना चाहिए कि वो जवाब दे, अगर वो करेक्ट है तो. तुम जैसे टट्टुओं को ना भेजे भाई, सॉरी फॉर द लैंग्वेज. शरीफ लोग यहाँ बैठे हैं, तुम पता नहीं इन शरीफों में कहाँ आके बैठे हो. थैंक यू उमेश जी. Sunil ji.
Yeah, thank you, Arifji. Just a quick point on that. And Umeshji, I mean, yes, you're welcome to participate. You should join the Reach group again if you can find it in yourself, and be more constructive. You're accusing us of all sorts of things, but as others have said, I don't think I saw you at the Pakistan High Commission protest that we all organized. And actually, it's a matter of open record. So go and look on YouTube and find it. You're asking for evidence of where we invited, or where Arifji invited Trupti Patel. It's a matter of open record that Arifji said Reach happens to be taking some initiative in organizing the demonstration at the PAC High Commission, but that he wanted all organizations that represent either Indian interests or Hindu interests or whatever to come under their own banners and protest at the High Commission. This was not a Reach protest as such. So, how did you miss that? How did you find other things that were better to do on that day when we were all there? So don't blame other people. I mean, get involved. We don't always have to agree on everything, and that's the nature of debate. But unless you participate positively, you can't then complain. Coming actually to the constructive things, because I think we've all talked about what isn't working. For me, what should happen to get to the more the solution focused approach, I mentioned the three constituencies, the sort of the older worshippers who are the regular goers to the temples, the young students, and the thriving business community that Hindus are known to be professionals. So what we need is an organization that can actually galvanize and bring all of those people together, get them to work together, and they'll all have slightly different interests, different emphasis, different order of priorities, but essentially to be the catalyst to bring those people together, to then facilitate what our issues are, prioritize those issues, and arrange resources to be able to get to our objectives. I mean, that all sounds like some sort of MBA lecture, but it's basic common sense. And that's what other organizations or other communities are doing. And we can learn from that. And we need to, as I keep saying, learn from our history that we haven't done those things. So my sort of suggestion is very simple and open. If people in the current leadership groups, whichever organization, so we've talked a lot about Hindu Forum of Britain, but I would invite anybody in any organization in whatever capacity they're involved, if they're spending time, devoting time at a volunteer level, then great. I'm really pleased that you're willing to do that. But now let's get involved in some debate where we agree these things that I've described, and then agree the way forward. Now, my personal view at the moment is I don't believe the current leadership of some of these organizations is able to make the change that we need. They may prove me wrong, and I'm open to having a discussion and a debate. And, if they can change and if they can bring everybody along with them, then I'm very happy. I have a busy personal life with family commitments. I have a busy and successful professional life. So I'm not looking to be And I'm like to think I'm still young enough not to be considering retirement. So I'm not looking for opportunities at the House of Lords or the House of Commons at Diwali. I want other people who do stand up for those opportunities to at least do the hard work that goes behind that. And if they can do it, and if we can help them to do it, then great. That's what I'd like. Nothing better than that. But I go back to what I said earlier. We all need to think about what legacy are we leaving the next generation. And that doesn't really, come down to what individual roles we play. It's about putting our ego to one side and how working with whoever, whatever we think of them, to try and move things forward. Because if we don't do that, there will be no significant Hindu community in the next couple of generations. And who will be to blame for that other than us? I can't say it more clearly than that. So thank you, Arif, for the opportunity, and that's my positive solution, I think, in terms of how we move things forward.
इंद्रनील जी, आप कुछ बताइए.
देखिए, if predominantly अगर मैं Hinduism and also most of the Hindus come from India, so I sort of will mix. Hindus or Indians mostly come here, predominantly who are Hindus who have come here. I mean, when I say Hindu, I see in a broader context that would include Sikhs, that would include Jains, that would include Buddhists, yeah, in some of the Christians and things. Yeah, we have met some very nice people around. Yeah, they come here to do work. They work hard. They do great service to the nation here in UK because they generate a lot of opportunities. They generate a lot of uh, good employment by technology development and also business, and they also do a lot of service to India by providing them the remittance, the foreign exchange, and also the knowledge transfer and things. So those things are happening great. It's absolutely a great thing, and they can be from different various political background or their personal background. They're fine, and most of them are doing well. Most of the upbringing of the children are good here, that they do. Most of them are doing very well in the society here. One thing, fine, fantastic, happy, tick mark. What is happening on the other side also is that, and where we are finding ourselves in a bit of a situation is that because of this, we were all a happy bunch of people, meet every Sunday or every Saturday, have a glass of wine and ha ha he, kuch puja ho gaya ghar pe, to puja kar liya and all that thing. But now we find ourselves in a position because the other part of the society, which is again from our Asian continent, which is predominantly let's put it that way very bluntly, the Pakistan society that has come here, they find themselves alienated. They could not, for whatever reason, and this is not I'm saying, this is a published report of BBC also, sometime some years back. They could not emerge themselves and they could not mix themselves very well with the society. The first generation and the second generation, they found themselves a bit alienated, which has resulted to a lot of frustration within themselves. And you see the crime rates and all that's all open. But that has stemmed an attack on the Hindus that is happening here. Leicester being the first, and if we don't form a good body now and try to think about it seriously, this that won't possibly, and unfortunately, I don't think will be the last. And that is the worrisome here, that tomorrow, if our children are going to school, well, they will be bullied being a Hindu, you know and it's very easy, and some of the English words that they have learned, and possibly the only English words they have learned, is fascism, Nazism, ABCD, and it's and very well stemmed by the media here also. I mean, I have a different debate that if that's the word, then how do you the term Tony Blair, who went and bombarded the country on a rumor that there's a WMD and still not being faced any court of law and things, but that's a different aspect. But this is where I think the society is dividing here a bit, or being made to divide, where the Hindus are becoming a bit more. I think the list of violence has shown a bit of, and the aggressiveness and the aggression that has come from the other side has shown a bit of, nervousness, that where do we stand really? This can happen again. Is it happen in Leicester? Can it happen in Birmingham? Can it happen in anywhere? It did happen in Birmingham. Can it happen in my back door? And things like that. So this is where we need someone for two reasons. I mean, we need this forum. We need a body which not only gives a proper information and has a proper back management system here, but also preaches something good about Hinduism, because this is Sanatan Dharma has so much of value, so much of culture, so much of wealth of knowledge to also give it back to the society here. And are we doing that as somewhere? I think we do it. I'm not saying we don't do it, but don't get me wrong. But we do it in a much scattered way. Can we join up to do something much more better together? And I think that's possibly one thing we need to all think and need to find a way ahead. It would be easy. I think I'm not saying it's an easy way out. I mean, I don't have a scripted answer for that, but I think that's the only way. And for that, we need to be at least the people who are in the society, who have a standing in the society today here in political, in business, in different things, has a responsibility and ethical, a sort of a subconscious responsibility to take that forward and to join up something to do for the society, and also for a larger scale of thing, to prevent something that has happened like Leicester, and that's more important.
Thank you, Indranilji. Dinosaur has a question. I would like any one of you if can reply. आरिफ भाई, ऋषि सुनक ब्रिटिश इंडियंस के लिए क्या कर रहा है और एक्सट्रीमिस्ट बिगड़ी हुई पाकि पॉपुलेशन को ब्रिटिश में लगाम कैसे दी जाएगी? एनीवन? जी जी सुनील भाई, फिर आदित्य भाई.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I mean, look, we need to put things in perspective here. Rishi Sunak has been elected as the Conservative leader and the Prime Minister of the country. We cannot expect him to take on all the challenges that we should be facing. There's a certain limit that he has in terms of what's politically possible. He actually also has his own challenges, because one of the reasons he didn't win the leadership election in the first instance and they elected such a disastrous leader was, in my view anyway, at least partly to do with some of the entrenched view in the Tory establishment, which saw him as maybe a bit of an outsider, etc., etc. So, we need to be realistic. For all the chest thumping that I've seen in India about we have a Hindu prime minister, etc., the real politic of the situation is that he also has to actually keep the mainstream conservative membership happy. Otherwise, he will be seen to be doing exactly what they feared, and actually the enemies of Hindus in India will also be looking for those signs that here you go. So let's have too high an expectation. Let's be realistic. I'm pretty sure, and I would hope that we have at the very least a sympathetic and knowledgeable person in power who will be able to do certain things. But let's get things in perspective. For us, India is everything. For him, India is maybe one thing in the context of all the other issues he faces. And yes, in the context of trade relations, etc. To be honest with you, I think we would be better placed at putting our emphasis on the High Commission of India here, and asking them, for example, that India is regarded as an emerging superpower, economically at least. And therefore, it's involved in bilateral trade negotiations and things. So use the power that India now has to further the cause of things that are important to us, whether it be recognition of Hindu interests in the UK, or whether it be recognition of the India narrative that's being financed and supported. So I think we're maybe having too high expectations of Rishi Sunak. It's not fair, and maybe we should be focusing elsewhere if we're looking for change from society that's beyond what we can do.
Aditya
डायनासोर साहब जो पूछ रहे हैं कि what has Rishi Sunak done for the Hindus in the UK? I think one of the biggest thing that he's done is the fact that he's a Hindu prime minister of the United Kingdom. He encompasses his central ideas based on his religious beliefs and his religious systems, which is family values, hard work, and education, and that is what he actually brings onto the table. So let's not take that away. We should use him as a soft power, like how we use Mahatma Gandhi, or like how we use other leaders, coming in from India who are recognized globally. Rishi Sunak is just one of those leaders who is now recognized as a Hindu prime minister in the global political domain. So we should use that to our advantage. And that is one of the biggest wins we have in the politics of this day and age. With regards to what he is doing with the extremism uh, in the UK, I think that's a very, very contentious and a very, very difficult debate to have, primarily because of the kind of political pandering that actually happens to most of these areas where extremism essentially emanates from. I mean, for so long, Stockton is an area which has been requesting for loudspeakers to be installed for giving the azan for 7 years now. It finally got approved this year because of the political assertiveness of the Muslims of that particular constituency. So I don't think it's going to be that easy to control extremism uh, until all parties come together and realize that this is a problem. The problem that the Conservatives essentially face at this point is that the Labour Party is behaving exactly how the Congress has behaved in India for the last 70 odd years, where they are pandering to a certain population and expecting them to vote as a consolidated vote bank. So until the Labour Party realizes and looks at India and realizes where India is from this problematic perspective, and take learnings from that, I don't believe we can expect much of a change to those extremism emanating from the so-called Islamic world, whether it be in Bradford, whether it be in Manchester, Birmingham, or even Luton.
Thank you, Aditji. Now, winding up the session, I would come to the closing remarks from everyone. So, starting with Panditji, you wanted to say something about this, and then your closing remarks on today's topic.
Thank you very much, Arif bhai, and thank you for shutting down the hecklers and doing it in a manner which was purely Punjabi. So fully appreciate it. But I just want to bring it back to the point, which is very, very seriously the main issue. In Leicester, hate crimes were targeted at Hindus in huge numbers. Every single crime that happened over those 3 or 4 nights was a hate crime. We were not protected by the police. They stood by the sidelines and watched. And only a couple of days ago, I published the decision. There was a conclusion. In 1996, the committee sat to work out what is the purpose of a police force. And they produced a lovely document, and I published exactly what the purpose was, and it includes protecting the population. And the other elements of that purpose, none of them were fulfilled in Leicester. Who's going to ask these questions and hold the authorities accountable? Who's going to be speaking to John Ashworth, MP for Leicester? Who's going to be speaking with Peter Soulsby and holding him to account for what he has done? The issues have not gone away. If anything, they're accelerating. That Superintendent Paul Allen, the one who said that he had heard Hindu chants saying death to Muslims, he has written a letter only a day or two ago, effectively saying, let's forget what happened. Let bygones be bygones. Let's sit together and find a way forward. That is not the role of the police. The role of the police is simply to gather evidence, produce culprits in a court of law, and that's it. They're not social workers. They're not responsible for these duties that they want to take on board. Who is going to remind them of this? So these are unbelievably serious issues, and we have to have an organization which is in shape. Now, I know how hard it is to create an organization from scratch. The Hindu Forum of Britain is also the repository of effort, time, resources of probably, I would say, several hundred people over a period of at least 10 or 15 years. That's a huge amount of investment capital to create this organization. So I'm a great advocate of evolution rather than revolution. Starting from scratch is going to take time, and there's no reason why Hindu Forum's current trustee body, they should recognize that there is now no confidence in their executive committee, and probably no confidence in the board of trustees either, who are responsible for making corrective actions. Having said those two things, they should, I feel, be able to seize the moment to step forward and say, right, with complete transparency, we're going to call a meeting, have everybody come, here are our proposals, do you agree to them or not? Can we have the mandate to represent you? These are the sorts of things that should have been done a long time ago, and they haven't yet been done. If they fail to do this, then I think they will automatically become redundant because, as a number of people have said, they do not have the authority to represent us anymore. That has disappeared post Leicester. So, on the one hand, we have criminal activities against the Hindu community, and an organization needs to pick up the reins and make sure that we follow them through to conclusion. On the other hand, the organization needs to do this with complete transparency and accountability, and it's not possible, I don't believe, for the level of confidence that has been lost to be regained without a significant change in the management. Wouldn't it be wonderful if for once our community had completely open elections? What are we frightened of? Why do these things have to be done behind closed doors? All of a sudden, it's almost like a pope is elected, isn't it? Um, we have a clandestine meeting somewhere, and then all of a sudden, an orange puff of smoke comes out of a chimney saying, hey, we now have a new president. As a community, we're mature enough for there to be, I would suggest, two tracks. We have to have somebody, a group of people spearheading the religious interests of our community, and we have to have a group of people spearheading and representing the political interests of our community, and they cannot be the same. There is nothing more ridiculous than the president of the Hindu Forum of Britain standing in a freedom of religion and belief conference with people who are avowed religious practitioners and students claiming to represent the religious voice of the British Hindus. And then for the same leader to be standing with the Metropolitan Police talking about policing, there are some serious issues with regard to roles and responsibilities. So I really do reach out to certainly Lord Remy Ranger, who has an influential role to play and a history in the Hindu Forum, and certainly Dr. Ramesh Bhatni, Trupti Ben Patel, Ricky Sehgal, Compliance and Governance, and the other trustees to understand that there's a huge problem here. Unless they can help us and work with everybody to put the ship in order, I worry for the next attack on our community and how it will be dealt with. This is a very, very serious time. And so I really do look forward to an evolutionary process before we get to a revolutionary process. Thank you, Arif. Those are my closing remarks.
Thank you, Panditji. Sorry, the session has gone very long. So, Sunil Bhai, please, your closing comments, please.
Yes, thank you. And apologies, I've got family commitments, so I'll have to log out once I finish with this piece. But no, I completely agree. Evolution rather than revolution is the way to progress things. Having said that, it's very clear what we all think, and so where the action needs to come from in terms of a response. I think if people can change and we can have an evolutionary approach, then all well and good. If that isn't going to work, then obviously we need to look at alternatives. But I would encourage everybody who's taken time to join this call to not lose interest, not lose momentum, and help with this evolution that we're talking about. And if that cannot work, then to think of more constructive ways to get what we do need and deserve. So thank you.
Thank you, Sunil Bhai, and have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Gayatri ji.
I think Panditji and Sunilji have said a lot of positive things, and I am looking forward if Hindu Forum body can come forward and discuss what are they lacking and how they can improve with taking other organizations participation in their process of electing a new governance. So that would something I am looking forward to, and so that at least all there is a unanimous decision is being made, and when information comes from any higher authorities and it is disseminated equally, and everybody is acting towards a common goal. So I'm looking for that kind of change. And that's my closing remarks. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Gayatri ji. Adit ji,
Thank you, Arif bhai, for firstly hosting us. And I know the session ran slightly longer than expected, but I think it was an extremely illuminating and enlightening session, especially given the fact that in the panelists we have the likes of Pandit ji, Sunil ji, Indranilda, and Gayatri ji, and and yourself as well, Arif bhai. So it was an absolute pleasure to share this particular platform with all of you. Um, I think when I said this, to a gentleman not so long ago at the Indian High Commission that the HFB is essentially a toothless organization and it needs to essentially go away. And their retort to me essentially was that why don't you set up an organization to replace them? And I thought that was quite a valid argument that HFB has been there since 2003. There are problems, there are issues with how they are not introspecting, but there have been good that they have done. Obviously there is an expiry date to when and how people should essentially operate, and apparently that doesn't seem to affect HFB because of the structuring of how the organization is structured. It's a private limited company at the end of the day, and uh, it doesn't operate in a democratic manner. So that is what the person was essentially trying to say. That set up your own organization if you feel there are issues with how HTTP operate. But fundamentally, where the problem essentially comes in is that HFP has been able to put itself out there with the political parties and has been able to lobby certain interests of the Hindu and the Indian diaspora, and that to replace them will be a difficult task in my opinion. So which is why I think they are the ones who need to drive this particular session, and they are the ones who need to call out various people from the community and have this introspective session to understand where have we as a collective community faltered and how we can better ourselves. Simple SWOT analysis will do that, understanding what our strengths and weaknesses are and how we can match opportunities and threats. Having said that, there have been a lot of comments which have been, diatribes which have been attacked, and levied on us, saying that we are either Congress stooges or we are stooges on the behest of the Labour Party. And I would say to them that be it Conservative or Labour, I think we need to have a discussion with both of them because it's imperative that we keep the dialogue, that the room for dialogue open, the channel for dialogue open with both parties, because at some point or the other, conservatives are not going to be, they're not going to remain in power for life. They will be dislodged at some point. Labour Party will come back into power, and it is important and thus imperative that we have that constant engagement with them to ensure that our voices, our concerns, our political and religious concerns, like Panditji said, should be heard in a meaningful way.
thank you, Adit ji. And finally, Indranil ji, what would you like to say in the end?
I think one thing that I'll slightly take from that what he was saying about, and I heard that same comment being given at me that why don't you form your own organization? That itself is a
It's the
wrong
same
way of,
person, is it?
yeah, and that itself is a wrong way of putting thing is that this is my organization, I run it the way you want, you run your own organization. So that itself stems the stink. If I use a bit more harsher word, that is not run democratically, that you do not have a say in spite of you claiming to represent the Hindus of Britain. So if I am a Hindu of Britain, I think I should have a say in at least in some part, and when that becomes a bit of a majority of a voice, you need to listen and not say form your own organization. That sense is contradictory of being a democratic organization, and I think this is the problem. I'll be very very candid. This is the problem. Unless and until there will be debates, there will be rights, there will be wrongs, there will be, and that's what makes an organization grow. Because if you have one mind system, it will never grow, it will never have a different vision. So, or different mindset and different ideas. To have those different ideas, to get the best of the ideas, you need to have the debate and you need to discuss. And unless and until you do that, you're saying that you're not a democratic organization, and that is not what Hinduism is all about. That is not what Sanatana Dharma is all about. It's more of democracy. So that's point number one. I think that's where that's the root cause. I think of the first of the problem. Uh, again, it doesn't matter whether it's a HFB and there's another Hindu Council of Britain and things, and you need to have one cohesive thing, irrespective of your political affinity and thing that stands for Hindus, that stand for the betterment of the society in a way, I would say, because Hinduism is all about betterment of the society, and that we have to so much to give apart from the threats that we have, and when we stand united, that threat will also seem to be taken care of because we stand united. And this is was I'm a simple. I mean, I believe in simple logic, step by step. I think the step one is about democracy. Step two about what you are about. You have to stand as one organization and let everybody join that organization and feel that unitedness. And let's have a debate internally, and then we listen to the leaders. India is. I mean, you can talk about anything of India. You can talk of anything about India, but there is a democracy. There is a debate, and someone can say that A is wrong or B is right or C is wrong or C is right. And that's what's the beauty of it. Even in UK, yeah, that's the beauty of it. And let's deal with it, understand that, and once we have that as a first step, second, third, fourth step can be defined. But I think we are stuck in the first step right now, and that's the lock we have to break. And Arifji, thank you so much for arranging this. This was a very, very informative
Uh,
discussion.
I would like to thank everyone, Pandit ji, Gayatri ji, Adit ji, Sunil ji, Indranil ji. It was an important debate. There are many people, not many, few people have commented that it should be behind the door, these discussions. I understand it, but they are not ready to discuss. I
And
personally
we
asked Lord Remy Ranger and Trupti Ben that we should sit in a place. You are our elder. You can tell us where should we come, and we could discuss. They are not ready to discuss behind the door. So what should we do? We
we
personally don't have any agenda against anyone. It is for the community, the Hindu community. We want that the issues that Hindu community is facing overall today, it is Leicester issue. If we will not address it tomorrow, it will be everywhere. So this is the problem. But anyway, thank you very much, everyone, for joining, and for the public also. And hopefully, we will have another session. Pandit ji, thank you. Adit ji, Indranil ji, and
Jai Shri
Gayatri.
Ram.
Namaskar, everyone. Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri
Jai
Ram.
Hind. Har Har Mahadev.
Ha, ha, ha.
Har Har Mahadev.